I'm Louisa Wilcox, and this is Grizzly Times, where we speak for the grizzly bear and the wild places it calls home. We introduce you to scientists, filmmakers, policy experts, and others who share their insights and experience speaking and working on behalf of the bear. At a time of unprecedented human-caused change, grizzlies depend on us more than ever. To learn more about what's happening and how you can help, subscribe to our newsletter at grizzlytimespodcast.org.
This is Louisa Wilcox with Grizzly Times, in part 2 of a fascinating interview with Tom Mangelsen, world-class wildlife photographer, committed conservationist, and friend. Here, Tom delves into his long relationship with the grizzly bear matriarch of Grand Teton Park, known by her number 399, who is perhaps the most famous grizzly bear alive. Tom recalls how 399 became the face of a recent battle over whether or not grizzlies in Greater Yellowstone should be hunted for fun, and his own crusade on behalf of her and all the grizzlies and wild animals of Greater Yellowstone and beyond. Well, Tom, maybe we should get to your experience with Grizzly 399, the famous matron grizzly bear of Jackson. It's really through your camera lens that you made 399 a rock star among all the many grizzly bears in Yellowstone. And this bear has now become kind of an ambassador for a different relationship with the grizzlies and all wild animals. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what she means to you and what do you think she means to the people, as you were describing, who flock to Grand Teton hoping to catch a glimpse of her?
Well, I've been living in the north end of Jackson Hole, right on the border of Teton Park, for 40 years now, and for the first 25 years, I'd never seen a grizzly bear in Teton Park. They'd been extirpated for 50 years at that time, and basically, other than a few that might wander in the very north edge of Teton Park, they were gone, and they were only maybe 250, 350 bears in Yellowstone at that time. And so if I saw a grizzly in Yellowstone, it was like a big deal. And I'd ended up going to Alaska to photograph grizzlies along the coast and or Denali Park, where there were still interior grizzlies that were fairly common. So when the first grizzly showed up here, which was there's one that was on my deck, actually, in the middle of the night. My Labrador was laying by the sliding glass door at the end of my bed, started going crazy, barking, and I bolted up upright, and I saw this grizzly staring at the dog, and just face to face through the glass, and I thought, oh, it's a black bear, and I've seen black bears down here before. That was not that uncommon, and then I realized, no, that's not a black bear, it's a grizzly. I thought, holy crap, and so that was in 2006, 2005. I'm not sure when, 2005 or 6. But and I thought, well, is that something I imagined, or was it a dream or whatever? But I realized, no, it wasn't. It was real. And then in 2006, in the late fall, I heard that there was a bear with triplets, coys, cubs of the year, at the Oxbow Bend, and so my assistant Sue Searholm and I drove up there just to get a glimpse of this anomaly, basically, the first grizzlies to return to Teton Park. And sure enough, there she was out on the island of the Oxbow Bend with her cubs eating on what looked like a moose carcass. It was right at dusk and hard to see, and no real photographs or anything. And that was the last we saw her. That was in like September, October. And then the next spring in April, we went up there, and we heard that there was a bear there with 3 cubs. It was the same bear with now they're yearlings and a bit bigger. And so we thought, oh, that's great. We'll get some pictures of her, and then probably get a few pictures and document this great return of the grizzly. And that'll probably be it. She'll probably be gone and disappear. But she hung out all spring. She hung out in April. She came out in April, May, and was there till all summer and again in the fall, and then disappeared into high country, into her den. And so the next year she came back out. So it became an annual. And what the neat thing was, and what was fascinating about her, I think, is that she was considered a roadside bear, which means that she could tolerate people, and she preferred people over the interior backcountry where large males tend to live, and sometimes will harm the cubs or kill the cubs. To put females back into estrus. When they're nursing, they have cubs. They're not receptive to being bred much, so the males can spread his own genes. The same thing that lions do and tigers do, and a lot of other animals. But so she felt more comfortable. That our theory is anyway. Have to ask her, but she seemed to be very comfortable around people, and she only attacked one person. Maybe she was up at Jackson Lake Lodge. That was just like the second year when they were yearlings, and they killed a calf. She'd kill a calf elk, and they were feasting on it just right next to Jackson Lake Lodge. They actually knew she was there. They taped it off like with police tape, and there was a walker runner early in the morning. He saw the tape, and then he didn't pay much attention to it, and he basically ran right face to face with her and the 3 cubs and the carcass, which is the worst possible scenario. And he backed up, and he tripped on a root or a stone or something and fell backwards, and it set her in motion to, he rolled over, and she bit his shoulder, and one of the cubs sort of decided to join in. About that time, a woman on horseback came by, and they ran off, and ambulance came, and he begged usually they would kill the bear that did that, but he begged on the way to the hospital, people said he begged them not to kill her because he was wrong, and she did everything right according to a bear. You protect your cubs, you protect your food, and sure enough, the superintendent, Mary Gibson Scott, erred on the side of the bear and said, well, she did do the right, it was a normal behavior. It wasn't aggressive, and it wasn't, didn't look at him as a food source. So fortunately, she let the incident go. And that was the only time she's ever attacked anybody, and the only time I've ever actually, other than little quick bluff charges here and there, she's not even been aggressive enough to bluff charge people. So that's a real winning situation. So people can see her regularly over the years, and this is the 15th year now I've been watching her. Yeah. She's 3 years old, and she'll be 25 now. It's January, so she probably was born in January. But last spring she came out with quadruplets, which is incredibly rare in the bear world. And she had 3 sets of triplets and 3 sets of twins and a couple of single cubs. In a couple of years, she didn't have any. But at 24, most bears don't live much past 15, let alone have cubs that late in their years. So it's a real surprise. She's incredibly healthy, incredibly good mother. I think I fell in love with her. I just felt that she was such a good ambassador for other bears and for other wildlife. And she taught people a lot about the bear world and how important they are or how special they are because of their behavior and everything about them. But she would take the cubs. I realized that first year she would take the cubs to the side of the road. And she has to cross highways all the time to get from A to B, a different food source. And she would look up and down the road, sort of like a city dog, maybe in New York. A stray might live in the city, before it crosses the streets of New York. And she knew this, she was that intelligent. Of course, we all know bears are incredibly intelligent, but until you actually see it, and how dedicated she was to her cubs. If one cub got left behind, she'd go back and get it. Sometimes her cub would grab one of the highway cones and play with it like it was a chew toy, and she'd have to go scold it and come on, you got to keep going. But the most fascinating, I suppose, the most rewarding thing was the number of people that were so overjoyed that they saw a grizzly bear. Most who had never seen one before. And then it just grew and grew and grew, and then she became this quote rock star. She had her own Facebook page, and more and more people saw her and learned about her. From all over the world, they get messages that how's $3.99, and what do you think she's going to come out with cubs this year? But as the years passed, more and more people would come just specifically looking for her. About 3 years ago, I think the value of the bear is a good example here. That little story that I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. It's $3.99. Their cubs were just south of Pilgrim Creek, which is where their main territory is, and there's like 3 big vans of 30 kids from Olathe, Kansas. They were on a tour, summer tour, and they must have been in the early spring or fall. But one of the kids, I just did the book called Grizzlies of Pilgrim Creek with Todd Wilkinson, and one of the kids came. They got out of the bus, and I didn't even take my camera because she was so far. It was she was sort of a dot with the 2 cubs, and this kid came up to me and said, "You're Tom Mangelsen, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I have your book, and I was hoping I might see you." He said, "Would you sign that?" I said, "Well, yeah, sure." So he brought his book from Olathe, Kansas, wherever the hell it is, but hoping to find me, and so that
wow.
So I got my camera and we set it up into the long lens, and kids, look through the camera, and there's a couple of guys with scopes there, and they were just so happy and excited to see a bear. So the teacher, one of the teachers came up to me and she said, "Tom, this is so great because we've been to South Dakota, to the Badlands, to Glacier, Yellowstone, and now here, and this is the first bear we've seen." And she said these kids will remember this day for the rest of their lives, and a lot of these kids will probably never ever get a chance to see another grizzly bear. So I thought, wow, that is the value of keeping bears in the landscape, not having them taken off the endangered species list, not having them hunted and killed by some idiot that has a small penis, I guess. But I think that it's important. It really is to steal that opportunity, which I talked about a little bit before there, but that really sinks in because that may be the only bear that these kids will ever see. And it's so important that we foster that and protect not only her but other bears like her, and wolves and cougars, and teach them, the value of these large carnivores, herbivores, predators on the landscape, but last summer there were, I think, 5 million people came through the park. Everybody's expecting 4 million, and 3.5 million is the normal average. But because of COVID, a lot of people didn't travel, and everybody thought, well, nobody's going to go to the park because of COVID, but everybody thought the same thing, and everybody did come to the park. So there were far more people here this year than a normal year, and there were bear jams in certain holidays, July and Labor Day, of maybe, I think we estimated somewhere between 800 and 1,000 people that were watching 399 and her cubs, or 610 and her cubs, or a couple other ones that were offspring of a bear called Blondie. But they would attract, these bears would attract that many people, and still when everybody's standing alongside the road, and there were bear handlers there, wildlife brigade people, and they try to keep people and bears from getting too close, and which is good. And but it was still kind of mayhem, and it wasn't the most pleasant way of watching a bear in the wild. Like if I were in Alaska and I was the only person there, maybe, or a couple friends. But the trade-off was that these, say, 800,000 people in a day, you multiply that out for the from April to October. Well, she didn't go into the den until January 1st, and even in December, there were a couple hundred people out there on some days when she was out. You multiply all those people together, and you know, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people it would be, but it's in the hundreds of thousands. And so when the next time that they try to, which they are now, trying to remove grizzlies from the endangered species list again, we will have another, several million people likely opposing that move, and hopefully they speak out and have such an appreciation for the bears and the landscapes that they will again lose. And they, being the game of fish and wildlife, and sports for fish and wildlife and other agencies, the parks, they will lose that battle yet again, I hope. So that trade-off is many people but people are being educated and people are having incredible enjoyment, and it's so important these days to give people that opportunity, I think, to be outdoors, and for the kids who are, maybe not totally absorbed in their iPhone or something, doing something else. But
well, yeah, I mean, and you hope that, like the kids in the bus from Kansas who were, thrilled to see her, don't stop with their interest with a photograph. You hope they go home and really do their research on how few grizzly bears there are compared to what we had. And, we're down to about 3% of what we had in the lower 48 states when, Europeans first arrived. And what you'd hope they'd learn about how difficult it really is for a grizzly bear to make it in the wild anymore with all the threats from people. And you'd hope that they could appreciate the challenges a bear like 399 has, living on the combination of national forest lands, private lands in Grand Teton. And so even though she's a really successful mother and unflappable around people, we still have seen about half of her offspring killed as a result of all kinds of conflicts. Maybe, Tom, you could share a little bit about what makes her cubs so vulnerable.
Well, even though she's a great mother, she's teaching them, all the places, her territory, her place where she goes finds food, whether it be berries in the fall or elk calves in the spring. She teaches them in the way of navigating around people and where to go down and everything. So much of what's learned is dependent on the mothers and bears. But I think the cubs are, especially when they're young, just out of the den, they're clueless. Like, they're helpless basically without their mother, and they could easily be killed by a male bear, or if they were in presence of it and she wasn't so protective, and they wander off. One of the cubs wandered off early this spring, and it was gone for like an hour. It wandered like a mile away, and I thought, oh my God, what the hell are you thinking? And all of a sudden I realized where's Mom, and it followed the scent track back, and crossing the highway, sometimes they want to go across with the mom, the three will stay back. Highways in the summertime are insane here with the traffic, and the main highway going to east out of the park. They spend a lot of time out of the park, and there's little protection. 399 and her cubs went to berry patches in August and September for several weeks, and they would cross the highway 2 or 3 times a day, going to sleep at night and going to get water in the middle of the day, and there's big trucks, 18-wheelers, going 70 miles an hour, and it's just a freaking nightmare. It's like Russian roulette. So getting past that, but sometimes one cub would come with Mom and 2 cubs would stay on the backside, and she'd have to go back and get them, or they'd run across just willy-nilly. And so that was just like, a really frightening deal. And the fact that they really don't know. They haven't learned that, look both ways before you cross the street, like she did. And then you come to hunting season, which is the next most dangerous time, which starts in September, October, the bow hunting, and then, of course, rifle season. And the season in the National Park itself, to reduce the elk herd, as they say, which is questionable. But she follows the gut piles and the lost carcasses that hunters don't retrieve, and she will run to the sound of a gunshot, like a dinner bell, and then she'll come upon a hunter that's gutting out an elk or another bear. I mean, people have been killed in conflicts that way, and of course the bear always loses. And unfortunately, there's been some people killed over whose carcass it is, which is unfortunate for everybody. But it's a surprise. Or the hunter up on Blacktail Butte a couple years ago who told me that he saw 399 in really close range, and he pulled down with his gun, and he saw the cubs, and he realized that it was 399, and he didn't pull the trigger. But it's like so close. And one of those first three cubs that I mentioned was shot by a deer hunter just outside the park. They don't know the park boundary and where the hunting season is or not, and it was just merely eating this moose that somebody probably had misidentified as a elk or something. I don't know. There's no moose season there, but she was on top of it, and hunter came along and surprised her. And she stood up, and he shot her in the chest 3 or 4 times, killed her. And he was only fined $500. But it was, the Endangered Species Act still is. He could have been fined much, much more than that. He could have been put in jail. It could have been, lost his hunting license for 5 years, etc. And I think he did lose it for a few years. It's a deterrent. The Endangered Species Act is a deterrent to hunters who would just normally shoot at will, or because they want, just want to kill predators. And, fortunately, the Judge Dana Christensen, this last 2 years ago, as it was now, he put him back on, and he removed from the endangered species list, and they're going to shoot 23, or they could hunt 23 bears, 1 in Idaho and 22 in Wyoming. Immediately, the game officials, their kind of management, as soon as they were taken off the endangered species list, the Fish and Game decided that they would have a hunting season. And, for years they said, well, it doesn't mean we're going to have a hunting season if you take them off the endangered species list. Well, which was bullshit, because immediately when they were taken off the endangered species list, they were put on a hunting species list, and there was a lottery to hunt 22 bears in Wyoming and a couple in Montana. That Montana people rebelled, and the Montana Game and Fish decided not to have a hunt. Idaho had to hunt for 1 bear. Anyway, there's 22 bears, a lot of bears. And 399 would be vulnerable in that, because it would be in one of her areas. And again, 399 is only special because, well, we know her and people get to see her, but she's in a way no more special than any bear out there. They all have a right to live, and they all have their own cubs and are sentient and intelligent and emotional as 399. But anyway, so they had this lottery for 22 licenses for Wyoming, and 7,800 people applied, including I got Jane Goodall to apply, and Cynthia Moss, who's an elephant researcher. Yeah. So we got everybody possible, because the thing was, they would allow 1 hunter at a time in the field for 10 days to get, quote, his bear, and then if you shot the bear on the first day, then they go from 1 to 22, and so you shoot the bear on the first day, and then the next guy up, and then he takes 5 days and he shoots his bear, and the next guy up, and etc. But theoretically, you could have 10 days and not get your bear. I always like this and hunters say, I got my elk. It's like, well, what the hell you mean your elk? But
right.
That's the language that hunters use. So very serendipitously, I drew number 8 out of the 22, and there were 7,800 applications. So getting number 8 was like,
yeah,
because I thought they would just throw my application in the trash can because I'm outspoken about bear hunting, and
right.
but Sue, my assistant, put it on the Facebook page. Oh, lo and behold, Tom got one of the bear tags. It was a big surprise when he woke up and found out that he had won one. And on that Facebook post, there were several people, one in particular, that wrote that, well, Tom, I'm coming home, and all they're going to do is find your camera and your dead body.
Oh my God!
Yeah. I had only won the lot. I only won the tag. It didn't, I didn't even go hunting yet or anything, because obviously I was going to go hunt with a camera,
right.
not a gun, and take up those 10 days. But I was also not going to steal the opportunity of the outfitter. But I was going to hire an outfitter and horses and do the whole thing for 10 days and pay the money so that nobody's going to get screwed out of the, quote, outfitters' fees for leading a hunt. But I found 2 outfitters that would take me and were sympathetic to me, and they didn't really want to kill bears, and they liked bears. And one of them said, well, be no big deal to get pictures of bears, because all we do is we'll shoot one of the elk, have a tag obviously, and then gut it and leave enough of the carcass out, and we'll just wait a day or less, and there'll be a bear on it. So, and that's how they will hunt them. So there's no hunt, there's no sport, there's no respect. And he says it'd be simple as hell for you to get all the pictures you want that way, and it'd be simple as hell for the hunters to kill their bears. Well, unfortunately, that last day before the season opened, that evening, the judge ruled to put the bears back on the endangered species list, and the hunt was canceled. But that was a good. I was in Nebraska with the opening of it was called a Life in the Wild Legacy show, where they have a museum show, traveling museum show, and I was doing a little lecture to go with the show, and I was talking about $3.99 to the audience, and that as I speak, I said, the judge is making a decision, and it was a hard fought, especially as you well know, you were totally involved with that, as was Dave, and many people fighting to keep them on the endangered species. But anyway, we was talking about all that, and my nephew, all of a sudden, he walks up to the podium, and I said, what the hell, have I got my pants unzipped or something? He's going to tell me something? And I know he's walking up to the podium, and he hands me a note, and it says the judge ruled to put the bears back on the endangered species list. So at the moment I said that, he came up, and the woman next to him was elbowing him.
Wow. She
was looking on her iPhone, keeping track of the decision. This is in Omaha. Keeping track of the decision, and elbowed my nephew. She didn't know it was my nephew, and she just showed him this ruling, and he thought, well, I should go tell Tom, and he said, you go tell him, and he said, no, you tell him. So anyway, he came up, and so I told him, I said, oh my God, they just ruled against putting him back on the endangered species list, and everybody stood up, and there was a standing ovation for the bears, and in Omaha, So that was pretty cool. So,
that was really cool. I mean, you and your work with $3.99 and the photographs you took really were the face of that campaign. I mean, I have never seen, over 1 million people commented against delisting. Only 0.999% people supported it. I mean, the face of that campaign was the bear that you photographed and all, her offspring and the like. And I've never seen, in my 30-some years of history with this issue, so many people excited about protecting grizzlies and preventing them from being, sport hunted. It was really incredible. I mean, you deserve that standing ovation.
Well, I'm not sure it's for me. I think it's for the bears mostly.
It's for the bear, but it's for the effort.
Judge.
Yeah. I mean, I was wondering. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I was sitting in that courtroom, biting my nails, and David, my husband, was so nervous that he refused to go in the courtroom. Actually, it was completely packed. There was an overflow room. Actually, I was sitting near a bunch of reporters. Nobody could sit back in their chair. I mean, there were so many people on these benches, and he ruled, and the hearing was done early afternoon, and within like 3 or 4 hours, he ruled. I mean, it was really high drama, high stakes, because that weekend the hunting season would have started, as you said, and I think we were all at the edge of our sanity at that moment. And the other thing was, too, in that fight, the science community really came on board. I mean, these are animals with incredibly low reproductive rates and incredibly high human-caused mortality rates, and with state management agencies getting to reduce the size of the population, that, we saw a host of characters, including your good friend, the renowned scientist Jane Goodall. I mean, there were scientists from all over the place who were weighing in on that fight, and that was really gratifying.
Yeah, there was Todd and I, when we went back to D.C. to testify for the in front of the Natural Resources Committee for the bears, and it was interesting to see how many congressional leaders actually were sympathetic. Of course, most of them were Democrats, but they that was a pretty special time, and to see the outpouring of caring for the bears from that group. And you speak of Jane, she is a good friend. I've known her for 20 years or so, and we went to Yellowstone. She did at a lecture here at the National Wildlife Art Museum in 2002, and I was asked to introduce her, and which terrified me, but I did, and then we got through that, and she'd been in my gallery, and my gallery manager asked if she had ever been to Yellowstone, and she said no, and he said, well, you should get Tom to take you, and she said, well, actually, I do have Sunday off, and so we went and spent a fabulous day, and that's how we became friends, and she's been coming to my cabin in Nebraska to see the cranes every March, but so she kept, we keep track of each other, and she knew I was passionate about 399, which she was disgusted that it had a number, not a real name, because she names all her chimps and by their personalities and things. And she said she refuses to call it 399. She's that no name bear, and so I just put N and B. And but when 610, that the female, there are two females and a male that's in that first set of triplets. When I first saw her, when she would turn 5 years old, she had twins, and that became a newspaper. 399 hadn't had cubs for 2 years, and the fact that her daughter now is of age to have cubs, and she did have twins. The newspaper guy called me up and said, what's Corey Hatch? He said, that's pretty cool. 399's first. The other female got shot by that deer hunter, and and the male of the three was killed by the game fish because it killed the cow. So she was the survivor of the triplets. Anyhow, she had her cubs, and that became a story. And then Corey asked me, the writer said, what would be frosting on the cake? And I said, well, he said, pretty cool, right? I said, great. What would be frosting on the cake? And I said, well, 399 showed up with the cubs this year because she hasn't for a couple of years. I'm not sure if she had them and lost them or what. But anyway, a week later, a friend of mine, a ranger up in the park, called me and said 399 is near the convenience store at Coulter Bay. So I raced up there and took a picture of her crossing the road. And then I called Corey and said, frosting on the cake. I just left a message. He didn't answer, knowing he would know what that meant. And so that became even bigger news that mom and daughter both have cubs. So there's 5 cubs running around up there. And it made AP picked it up, and it made a number of newspapers. Jane called me from London and said, your bears. She saw the picture, and we're in the Sunday Daily today in London. So she says she's making quite a splash. Well, we looked up the number of newspapers online and in print that ran that story, and over 228 publications around the world, including one in Turkey, that published that story in Turkey. Can you believe that? So that was the beginning of her fame, and that was pretty much about 10 years ago. And of course, not everybody was that excited about bringing more people to Teton Park, especially the one particular ranger there that said, "Oh man, there are going to be more people here now." I said, "Yeah, we'll get over it, because that's what parks are for, and that's what you get paid for." But that's and it's just gone on like that with every year she does something surprising, or then a year or two later she ended up 610 adopted one of her 3 cubs, and so 610 had 3, and then she had 2, which is relatively uncommon, but not you get together over carcass or something. That's probably what happened. It wasn't. Some people say, "Well, the old lady just wants, give the daughter one of her cubs. She's too tired."
Right.
That sounds cute, but realistically, they're probably on a carcass at night or something, and they wandered off, and the cub saw brown butt going into the willows and followed that one and realized it was her aunt, not her mother. And so it was nice, and 610 raised all 3 cubs to adulthood, and same way with 399, she raised those 2 cubs to adulthood. So anyway, things like that, that just keeps me interested.
Yeah, there's always something to learn from these animals. And, I just want to thank you, Tom, so much for bringing 399 and so many other animals alive for people who otherwise couldn't get in the wild, and hopefully inspire them to save them and work with, people like you and organizations to give them a better future, because many people want to see them alive, not gunned down, and it's a real opportunity. I just want to thank you for all of your work.
Thank you so much, and ditto to you for all your work. I just, every time I see 399, I think that somebody might shoot her. I just can't fathom that. I really can't, and or any bear now, because they are so smart, and they are so. Well, 399 had wandered. I'm sorry, one little story. She wandered south this fall, clear across town, past the Calico Pizza and past the bars and past the highways and on the ranch lands and down to Harrison Ford's property. And everybody thought she was, out of her mind. She'd got dementia, and that she was starving and whatever. Now she'll be back. So she did come back, and then she went down there again. But I think she was hungry so much she found some more berries down there in Alcarcas and things. But she did come back, and she came through my yard twice, which is pretty cool, and ate berries on my neighbor and my fence. And but I think if anybody spent any time with, whether it be wolves or bears or cougars, and cougars are almost impossible because they're so secretive. And by the way, I hope people go to cougarfund.org to look more at what cougars, the importance of cougars are. But I've learned so much about 399, and she traveled 40 miles 2 days before January 1st when she went into the den up above Pilgrim Creek in deep snows and she stayed out. There was this second latest time she went into den. It was January 1st, and she'd made the record of January 2nd about 5 years ago. Because she was there so much food, she decided to eat as much food as she can to get through the winter and put on as much fat. But watching her plow through 2-3 feet of snow with new cubs, it's so incredibly heartwarming. And I and my assistant, we tried to walk about 20 yards, seriously, in the same snow to get a better angle of her. And we could hardly get 20 yards because there was crust on top of the snow. And so she's at 25 years old, she's snow plowing. And the cubs, at first, they were just sort of playing grab ass with each other, following her because they were full of themselves and fat and sassy the first day. But then by the second day, they were marching right behind her, in her breaking trail. And but the thought of somebody killing her for fun or for any reason is just it would break my heart. But it would just break so many hearts. But that's what we have to instill in people. They need to get out and see these animals and go wherever they can to learn more about how lucky we are to have parks and national monuments and places that keep the wild. So anyway, thank you for letting me share some of these thoughts, Louisa, and keep up your good work. And Dave,
this has been my treat. Yeah, I just want to thank you, Grizzly 399, and so many other wild animals are blessed to have you and as an ambassador for them. So, thank you so much, Tom. This is Louisa Wilcox with Grizzly Times, here with Tom Mangelsen. Don't miss part 1 of this podcast for more on Tom's art, passion for wildlife, and his personal journey from hunting and trapping to relying only on a camera to shoot wildlife. A journey that has taken him to remote wilderness around the world.
If you want to learn more about the Grizzly and what you can do to help, subscribe to our newsletter at grizzlytimespodcast.org. And if you can, give us a review.